Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of eDiscovery After Hours. My guest this week is Ari Mandel of Gulfstream. This was an awesome episode, and we covered a lot of ground, including the fact that he's the youngest of 5 kids. He and all of his siblings growing up learned different languages, and he actually then was part of a mutual exchange program by going to France. We talked about what that was like. We talked about the fact that he studied television production and worked on some TV sets in high school and college. We talked about what that was like. We talked about the fact that his wedding song was chosen from when he sang to his then fiance at a karaoke bar, and that carried through into the relationships. We did eventually come around to talk about eDiscovery, and most specifically, how Gulfstream differentiates what they're doing, not only through kind of the primary point of contact and, education and training for their people, as opposed to a queue or, kind of a round robin of people picking up client requests, but also how they coach their people to understand the why behind the what's, to make sure that, whether it's software developers or consultants, that people aren't just taking a request at point blank and fulfilling it, but they're understanding why to potentially make, recommendations or consultations that clients hadn't considered before. It was a great conversation, well worth sticking around for the whole piece. If you don't know Ari, you're really going to enjoy this episode a lot. He's an awesome guy. The sponsor is Discovery Master. If you've got review projects going on in Relativity, let's say even you have a managed services provider that you love and you send most of your work to, there's going to be times where maybe a client requires that you use their instance of Relativity, or another partner from another office selects a vendor that they've worked with in the past. So many times people who are using Relativity are exposed to different instances hosted, who knows where. Could be on-prem, could be in Rel 1, could be data centers across the globe. By using Discovery Master, you can track all of your document review projects in one place, no matter where the data lives. For information on what Discovery Master does, how it works, and pricing, check out www.discoverymaster.co. Thanks for tuning in.
Quick time!
You don't know how to drink, your whole generation.
Drinks on the house.
Yes, sir.
No, wait a second. Drinks are 50% off.
Right.
No, wait a second. Double the price of everything.
And I work only 16 hours a day.
A union man only works 8 hours a day.
I belong to 2 unions.
And now, eDiscovery After Hours with your host, Ryan Short.
All right, Ari, cheers, man. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers. Thank you.
What are we sipping?
Single malt Scotch today. So this is one of my, as you can see, I've got 4 bottles behind me. Unfortunately, one of them's empty, but it's still one of my favorites. But so this one's my 15-year-old Macallan, one of their fine oaks.
Yeah,
So-
well played. Now, you were telling me, because I wanted to get into this, and you jumped the gun a little bit, but there's a story behind all these lined up, which, by the way, I have been on work calls with you, and you don't typically look like you're in a home bar. So
No.
I appreciate the effort for the occasion here, right? So yeah, tell me a little bit about what's going on here on your desk.
So, well, first, I mean, let me say I have my father to thank for this personal addiction, including the reason why there's a permanent coffee cup on my my desk as well. But so all four of these have a story, including the bottle that I'm drinking today. This was one of my first thank you presents from my boss, the president of the company, Gulfstream, for one of our first incredibly successful years. But the other 3 bottles, I purchased all of those in different countries on different consulting gigs, including my favorite, which is this Highland Park right here, which I got while I was living in Switzerland, in Zurich, actually, on contract with a company called TLXP at that time. And we were contracted to work in-house for UBS, actually. So we got to spend a wonderful about 2.5 years in Zurich, helping them with a few small little legal matters, and of course, I brought home a few souvenirs with me. But the other two bottles, the green box, actually right there in the middle. That's actually from the last trip I made with my dad. Now, that was a number of years ago now, unfortunately. 16-year-old, that's from Scotland itself. I was working in London at the time. My father had flown over, and then we made a little trip up there. And the last one, actually, even though it's still single malt Scotch, I got in the south of France. And
Really?
that was ironically, that's even older. I took a job, and they flew me down to the south of France to run a collection. And I keep that one around because it's a memory of my very first forensic collection that I ever got to go on site for at the time. And the only reason I got it is I was vacationing in Paris at the time, and I got a call from my boss at the time. And he said, "Hey, I know you just got your certification. I don't know if you have your laptop with you. We just got awarded a project, and they would only take us if we can get somebody in the next 24 hours." And I don't even remember what the city was, to be very honest at this point. God, I'm going to date myself here in a moment. But we had to go to the south. He was like, "I need somebody in the next 24 hours in the south of France, and I know you're in Paris right now, and you are coming home tomorrow." He goes, "I will give you an extra week vacation and pay for an upgraded ticket back for you and your girlfriend if you shoot down there, run this collection, and then come back." And I was like, "Done."
You dog.
And while I was there, of course, I picked up that bottle. It's half empty now because I slowly sip it out of memory once a year.
It's half full. It's half
full.
Yeah. All right. So now that's a heck of a story, right? I mean, I don't know that I've ever had a guest on this show that has tied in the after hours part with the e-discovery part so well, as saying I've got this, this basically, my home, library here, chock full, all the shelves chock full of, work related whiskey trips. So that's pretty legit. So have you, obviously you mentioned in France you were vacationing, but you lived in Switzerland and in London for a period of time?
I did in both cities. And actually, as a high schooler, I lived in Paris as well, which is why I was returning. So I spent 6 months of high school living just on the south side of Paris with a family. And then when I went back for a vacation for that trip to Paris, I was actually there with my girlfriend at the time to visit that family. And the whole story is their son came and stayed with me and my parents for 6 months. And
I was going to wonder, is this like a mutual exchange program?
Yep. The school we had mutual exchange. So every kid at my school who took in somebody from Paris, vice versa, we went over and spent 6 months with them as well. So I want to ask you about that experience. Before I do, I'll tell you, we had a couple. I grew up in small town Indiana. I grew up on 6 acres of land. It was surrounded by 100 acres of farm and forest. And there was suburban developments around here and there, but it's a pretty rural area, right, for what most people would be acclimated to. And we had students every year who would land at my small little county high school who were from all corners of Asia, South America, Europe, whatever. And I remember thinking, how the hell did you get punished and sent here instead of to any of the 50 major metros in the United States of America? You landed in Yorktown, Indiana. And I, by the way, love my hometown, was very, fond memories, still lots of friends and family there, but not where I wouldn't want my kid to go to the Swiss equivalent of that. So I have to tell you, similar story. So I grew up most of my childhood in California, Cali born and bred, and then went out at high school to Tucson, Arizona, because my dad took a job out there, which is actually what got me into the industry. So again, thanks, Dad. But so when we moved to Tucson, we were still getting exchange students. And before Emmanuel came from Paris, we actually had two other exchange students, both from Brazil, that came over. And I asked the exact same question. So I was a freshman in high school, and I asked this kid, and I was like, You just came from Campinas, Sao Paulo, which is a major metropolitan area of Rio de Janeiro. Your family is fairly affluent, both doctors, and of all places on this planet, let alone the United States, you ended up in Tucson, Arizona. And I love Tucson. Do not get me wrong. Great food, wonderful scenery. I mean, the mountains, the hiking, absolutely amazing, great history. But how do you end up in Tucson, Arizona? And the stories I have out of that, I mean, the questions that he got asked by some of my fellow high schoolers at the time was just the most ridiculous questions. And it made me embarrassed at that particular moment. It's like, how do you, and I'll give you one of them. And this is an actual question he got asked on his first day of high school in Tucson, Arizona, mind you. He got asked if they had running water.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, and I love Fabricio. He is a great friend of mine, even to today. Bless him for that. And his response was, no, we all take buckets and we go down to the Amazon. That's how we get our water. Because he just he couldn't believe it. And so of course he came back with the perfect response. And these two girls that came up to him to ask him that question literally walked away thinking that he and his family, his mom, his dad, his grandparents, and his sister all walked down with buckets to the Amazon River to get water daily.
Oh man, we should do like a "Where Are They Now" episode and start collecting these tales from guests past. How did your family get involved in a program like that? Were your parents world travelers? Are they fans of foreign literature? I mean, how that's kind of a big thing, right? To have your own teenagers in your home, but then to say, you know what? I got to silence this call. This is the beauty of live productions here. Then to say, I want somebody else's teenagers in my house. It's a big thing.
So the long story short was it's actually because of my parents. Yes, they love to travel around the world. In fact, going back to France, my very first visit to France was when I was 9 months old. My mother and my grandmother had ironically, a scheduled trip for several years, even before she became pregnant. And they were determined that trip was still going to happen. So of course they once when Ari was just old enough, they still, with baby on board, they went back, they flew over to Paris and then down to the south of France, ironically, is now that I think about it. So I'm the youngest of 5 kids, okay. And all of us kids, not just were encouraged, but we were kind of required to learn different languages.
Plural, and not just one extra language.
Plural, and all of us speak different languages. Ironically, I think over the years, there's been some overlap post high school, but leading up through high school, most of us learned different languages, and they kind of did that on purpose. Like for example, my oldest brother, Jeff, learned multiple dialects of Chinese and got the opportunity. He studied at the University of Beijing. He was there during Tiananmen Square when it broke out. Wow. And got hired by, and I never remember if it's ABC or CBS, because he got stuck in China at the time. Just because they closed everything down. So he was, restricted in the area and he wasn't seen as a risk. So he got hired as a translating correspondent to the on-air correspondent. Wow. So he traveled with a news crew, basically helping cover some of Tiananmen Square. My other brother learned, things like Finnish and Danish and Swedish. My sister learning, German and Spanish and Russian, and my other sister learning other. So I grew up. I jokingly say the kind of the last 2 languages that were popular, so to speak, that I could get access to learn was French and Hebrew. So outside of English, I learned French first because of, there's another story there, because of an owner of a restaurant that we were very close friends with, my dear Michelle, who owns La Mère Michelle in South Bay, which is still there. But because of her, I learned French, and then for other reasons, I ended up learning Hebrew as well before I traveled and visited Israel. So
now, do you still speak French and Hebrew?
Not as well as I used to, mind you, but because of my time overseas, my French is not that bad. My time in Switzerland, of course, I picked up German, and thanks to what French I had, that's how I was able to learn German because Switzerland is such a diverse area, and I was on the German side, but there's enough French and Italian there, and most of the people there, they grew up in German, but they learn English, Italian, and French. So I could use my French to speak to the locals, and then as I was there over time, most of the locals started teaching me German. So now I can add German, or I call it functional German. I can speak enough I could live there and survive and sustain. I don't know that I could properly do business, with fluency.
So now, and I'm not going to date you. I'll let you do that yourself if you wish. But, you grew up in a time before Rosetta Stone or Babbel or all of these apps that you can get on a phone or a tablet.
Yep.
And I don't want to say easily pick up a language now. I think that does a disservice to many who try and struggle. But the access is far greater today. How did you and your siblings come to learn these languages from every corner of the globe?
So just, and I will say this was one advantage of growing up in California as compared to, I say, my time in Tucson, Arizona. Not that Tucson didn't have a multicultural, population, but California had, it was like, like most metropolitan locations, Houston, Chicago, Boston, New York, DC, California was the same melting pot. So access to tutors and availability of various language services were readily available to my parents. Most of the time I know, growing up in South Bay and even where a couple of my siblings went, they were in Palo Alto. So of course, proximity to Stanford and, the education that happens there. And then even by the time I was growing up, moving to Southern California, there was still that proximity to so many different cultures, all, within our arm's reach. For me, it was normal to have, people of 7 to 8 different nationalities on every street I grew up in. It just was, for me, it was like, okay, that's just how I grew up. And yeah, speaking of, dating myself, growing up in don't let the baby face fool you, but growing up in that time period of the 80s and even early 90s, it starts to, you get into the computer era. By the time I was dealing with college, a Mac Classic or it's starting to become more normal.
Yeah.
But and we still didn't have a lot of access to applications at that point, but it just, I was very fortunate. And of course, because of my parents and the friends that they keep, my godmother, for example, is Chinese by descent. She's first generation American, and all of her parents were Chinese. So just grew up in a very, very multicultural, dynamic, extended family. So I think that is absolutely incredible. Now I know you're married. Do you have children? I do. Four kids and 2 grandchildren. So
4 kids and 2 grandkids. Okay. Yep. So what's the age range, oldest to youngest?
So we go from, starting on the top end, because my oldest daughter was born in 97.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. 87.
Okay.
It was Freudian slip. And and the youngest son was born in 95.
Okay.
So we could start to do the math, but we're basically talking about from 34 to 26. So
and then
are the kids.
And did you raise your kid? I just joined the 4 Club 2 weeks ago. So
yes, congratulations, by the way.
I don't know. When are you sending me my member jacket? You and Matt Mann.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you, moving on to the grandkid phase is the best of all the worlds. So
I hear, yeah. I'm still knee deep in the toddler diaper phase.
So I'll tell you, in a way, I don't want to say I was fortunate with my kids. So all 4 of my children, and for all my friends that are listening out there, they know this already. Are from my wife's previous marriage.
Okay.
So by blood, I mean, I didn't have the privilege of, being at that phase.
Sure.
But the youngest two, I came around, when they were still very, very, very young.
Yeah.
So the youngest two for a lot of the time was I got the pleasure to help raise, and the older two were, that middle teenagers by the time I came in.
Yeah.
They are all my kids, 100%. And my wife reminds me on a regular basis that in a way she's not sure that I am not the actual biological father of a couple of them. The longer I'm around, the more personality she sees of me and them. Yeah. But she's like, wait a second here. I've been around the longest. Why are they resemble and mimic you more than me? And I'm like,
hey, there is nature and nurture, right? Yeah. And family can take on many definitions. My father's family was Brady Bunch. There was 4 Shorts and 4 Wilsons because of just some dynamics that we could get into later. But and then my wife's family, there's a few generations in a row of adoption. So family doesn't necessarily mean blood. So the genesis of my question was wondering, did you then turn and raise your kids in the same expectation that they be exposed to multiple languages? But I don't necessarily know that when you come into the picture, you got teenagers. That's the least of your concerns. Yeah, parlez-vous français,
Yeah. Well, so I mean, my daughter did learn a different language, and so did that oldest son. He does speak Spanish.
Yeah.
But my daughter went through she went military as well. She was military intelligence for, a single term.
Yeah.
And before she had the grandson. And the grandson is bilingual as well.
There you go.
So the granddaughter is just getting to that educational age, and we've introduced her to some other languages. So since the grandson's got the Spanish, we're gonna pick something else for her. I'm hoping the granddaughters will pick French. That way we can converse, and I can show her some of the pleasures, of France, even outside of Paris. So.
I love it. So, all right, I am endlessly fascinated by the topics of language and education and cultural interchange, et cetera. So we dwelled on this topic a little long, and it's probably just you and me and our wives listening by this point. But
oh yes,
but there's 2 more topics I want to get to. So first, you grow up and you're in these multicultural environments and you're learning all these languages, and then you go off to school. And of course, we know now that you've got this 20-year or maybe longer, I don't know, career, in
96. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. So 20, we've eclipsed 25 at this point, right? So you've got this, 2.5 decade career in legal services, e-discovery, lit support, et cetera. But that is not what you studied.
No. My first major in college was theater production.
Yeah.
I was from high school, because I was part of, and this is embarrassing, but I'll just say it. I was part of the Thespian Society. I mean, I actually tried to run at one point for a position, one of the state positions in the Thespian Society, but I was never an actor, stage person, singer. No matter what my mother says, I can't sing. I love her to death, and I'm glad she thinks I can sing. I love my wife for having the same thought. She's possibly tone deaf, and I love her for that too. Due to the fact that even our wedding song was picked due to a night at the karaoke with me singing it. And
I need to know more. What was the song?
Good morning. Good morning, beautiful. So
I got you.
Yeah. So, but I picked it out. It was my wife and I. So I'll digress for 2 seconds. So it was we were living in Virginia at the time, just outside of DC, and we were in this apartment. We found this karaoke place, and we were trying to decide on the song for our wedding, because we had just gone back and forth, and we'd gone through the long list like everybody else does. We found this place. We were tired after drinks. The boys had a babysitter for the night, so we went out and we were like, let's just go sit, relax, have a drink, listen to some karaoke, let's get some inspiration. And she goes, okay, I want you to go up there and just pick a song. It's not gonna be our wedding song, but just sing to me. And to my wife and I, and mind you, at this particular karaoke place, we are literally the 2 youngest people in the entire place, because it's all filled with women. And I think the youngest the closest person to age to us was 65 years old. Most of the women that were in here having a good time were probably in their 70s and 80s. I don't know how we found this place, and they were all amazing people. We went back several times, but so I picked this up. I picked this song. I go up there and I sing it. And during the song, one of these 70-year-old women come up to my wife and say, "Is he here with you? Because if not, I'm going to go introduce myself." And I'm very glad she said, "Yes, he's with me."
Now, I would have endeared me if she had said no.
Yeah. I think she thought about it for a second just to see what would have happened when this like 75-year-old woman tried to pick me up.
Yeah.
So, but that would have been quite entertaining. I think she would have gotten a kick out of it too, mind you. So, but anyway, so going all the way back. So all the way through high school, I was lighting and sound design. I actually, coming out of Southern California, I worked on a couple of movie sets. I worked on TV series, even in Tucson. Because believe it or not, there's a lot at that time. There was a lot of TV shows that were filmed in Tucson, so I got to intern and work on a lot of these TV shows. If I really if you, I'm going to say two names. If you know who they are, I won't be impressed. But it starts to date you. So my favorite TV show that I ever worked on, the two favorite actors I ever worked on, was Richard Dean Anderson and John Delancey. And if you know what made those two famous, I might be impressed. But
I can honestly tell you, I've heard both of those names. But if you held up both of their headshots and asked me to name them, I couldn't. I have no idea.
So Richard Dean Anderson was MacGyver, and
yes!
John Delancey was Q on Star Trek Next Generation.
Hell yeah!
So they were the two co-stars on the show that they were filming in Tucson at the time, and I got to work both lighting and sound on that, and that was my first major kind of production job that I got paid for. And of course, it endeared me to the industry. I kept doing it in high school. I went to college thinking, great, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And it's something I can make money at and enjoy and still enjoy my job. I got to the end of my freshman year of college, and it was the most miserable experience of my life. And I just about gave the middle finger to education at that time, ironically. The military at that point kind of saved that bus and corrected everything. It turned everything around. And of course, because I'd always worked in technology because of my dad, I went technology and software development with my father, got my degree, went into the Air Force, and always stuck in the legal industry basically that entire time. So
I love it. That's fantastic, man. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. And secondly, thank you for spending time with me on this podcast. I do want to make sure that we get to talking about you and what's going on with you in Gulfstream. So we'll have to leave the other topic. We were going to go real deep on these medals you've got hanging over your other shoulder.
I'll tell you real quickly. So, because I every time somebody sees those, they'll ask. So about 3 years ago now, I had the opportunity to go back into the reserves, something I didn't take. Just because of circumstances, I chose not to, so I could finish my 20 years of service. And so to do that, I had to get back into shape because I had put on. I was not in military shape anymore. I was.
You were in desk job shape.
No, I call it. I was like the poster image for dad bod. So. That really was me. And so because of that, I had to start losing weight. And as part of that process, I got very into fitness. And then I ended up going into powerlifting because it really was what drove me. And in my last two competitions, one, I placed second in my age and weight category. And this last one in December, I placed first in my age and weight category.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah, so I get to keep my two medals for my only two powerlifting competitions, and I think I got lucky that I got either one of them. But we'll see if I'll compete this September again with the big boys, and we'll see if I can hold up the tradition and still get a third.
Heck yeah, man! Trifecta. Well, that's awesome. Major kudos. But yeah, this is the point in the show where usually I turn it over to the guest and say, what's something going on with you within the industry or with your company that you think needs attention or constructive criticism or something you're excited about, or tell us about what's going on with you in Gulfstream.
So I'm going to take a second. There's two topics that I kind of like to talk about. So I mean, having to do with Gulfstream, I'm going to talk about relationships and how important they really are. And you don't have to have a current relationship to form a good relationship. So I'll speak both to our current clients and our new clients. And this has to do with, not just our account managers, but our entire technical team, our project managers, our software engineers, the guys who kind of help support everything behind it. I like to say we have kind of a unique thing. We don't like for our customers to be in the queue. I'm going to, pick on some other companies, that have the classic queue type system. You email in, you call in, you may or may not get the same person depending upon the time of day you call in. Even if you have a primary point of contact, you still may not get, him or her on a regular basis. So the team at Gulfstream, so when I came back here, it's been a little over 9 years now when I came back to Gulfstream. And one of the first things we did is we kind of said, look, we need to focus on relationships. And so when, our people inside have to be an extension of our client's team, you have to have that relationship with them. You have to know them. You have to know how they work. They have to trust you. You have to trust them. And over these, now 9.5 years, I've been very lucky that everybody that's joined the team is very good at having, keeping, and being trusted with those types of relationship with everybody we work with in the industry. And it's made us very successful, but I also think it's made our clients that much more successful. And I think it's a very valuable and undervalued tool in the industry. Other places I've worked in the industry have used the same philosophy as well, and all of them have been very successful as well. Because if you think about it, if you're a law firm and you have an outside vendor, or, you want a person there, at least one that knows how you work, how you like to do things, how you function personally, because how you function personally is a whole different twist than how the law firm functions. And your person that you interact with on a regular basis has to be able to know or learn those things to have that personal relationship so that they can provide you the support you need and extra support in additional times. Because I'll say a lot of our clients trust us to say, hey, I'm on vacation. I'm going to give you direct access to the case team. They're going to submit you requests. These are the things I need you to do. And by the time we get to that level, they don't have to tell us half the things. We become their out of office message, and they know that we already know their procedures, their policies. We're going to help them look good, not just them as an individual within the law firm, but we're also working to make the law firm look good. And it's been, it's been one of our core values that has been very successful, but also made us successful at the exact same time. I'll tell you, and I enjoy it as well because now I also know who I'm working with. It's not just Ari Mandel on the other side. It's hey, it's Ari. Let's have a drink.
Yeah, or, I know. Yeah, Speaking of which, I'm gonna have to refill soon.
Yeah, maybe not have a drink, but But there's people I can joke with about bad coffee habits, or what did you eat last night, or I know almost all of my clients. I know their kids. I know what's going on in their life. We don't just have to talk about this, but I also know when they're having a bad day, and we all have bad days, and so a lot of vendors, you'll get that. I call it the nasty gram. And sometimes you'll take it personally.
Yeah.
Well, because we have this very personal relationship, and I think it's key, we don't take it personally. We know, hey, they just got yelled at. Something bad happened. The firm just got bad news. They're just really busy. They lost somebody, on their personal side.
Yeah.
And so with that personal relationship comes so many other benefits. But with that personal relationship as well, kind of goes into my next subject, which is, and something we've already talked about, which is education, which is key to my heart. We hear all the time, or I hear from a lot of other friends that work for other companies, hey, these people don't use analytics or all these other things, and their own company is talking about using it, but they don't use it. So with these relationships, we can have honest conversations with people about, here's useful technology for you to use. We can teach them how to use it. They feel comfortable having these conversations with us. They feel comfortable asking those questions. But more importantly, I feel comfortable going to them and say, hey, you really need to do this. You're doing it wrong. And then I can teach somebody another way to do it so that they can see the current method and the new method side by side. And the reason education is so important to me is, and I say this is, and this ties back to our industry, so not just Gulfstream, which our education for us is very, very important, not just internally, but having our clients learn everything. So not just the latest trends, but truly understand what's going on in the technology you use. But because we can do this with our clients, I think we need to, as an industry, really do this with our next generation and other people that are in the positions doing some of the work. So we talk a lot about, well, where's next skill sets going to come from? We don't have a lot of people who are skilled individuals in the industry. And those that are skilled are either in comfortable positions, or they're in the wrong positions, or they're already entrenched and buried in here. So and we're all looking for, people with a skill set, but in a way, we still don't have a way to teach the right people those skills. And there are programs out there that are the correct program. For example, Seeds, and I'll take that. It's a great tool for the right people, depending upon what you want to do. But how do we teach just the basics of e-discovery for somebody to start in this industry? Or how do we teach somebody who's been in this industry so that they can get to the next step when they're not in a position right now that maybe encourages them to go or do something else? You can't hire them into, a technical e-discovery position, because if they're not in that already or don't have those skill sets. And so I really don't, I would love to see new ways for us to do this. Now, I talk, going back to Gulfstream, I talk about this. So for example, we started our poolside chat webinar, which, we had Ray on from your organization.
Shout out. Let's go.
Yep. There we go. Thank you, Discovery Master.
Sweet baby Ray.
And we started this as an picking topics to have casual conversations that are important about key topics and educate people, give them, these short 30-minute webinars that people could use to learn about a subject that they may not otherwise have access to unless they get the opportunity or are forced to go through it. And of course, there's always something that you have to experience once, whether you're educated or not, before you really learn something. But we shouldn't always have trial by fire to learn something. So we as Gulfstream started, these webinars to get through enough topics to help people see, okay, how can I do for example, my privilege log better? How can I manage reporting across cases for different instances of relativity? Because we at Gulfstream, we know our clients don't always work with us. I mean, we're very blessed. Our managed service clients, we get their work, but not all of our clients, sometimes they're forced to work with other vendors. So how do they, again, talking about Discovery Master, how do you find information across multiple different systems from one interface? Most people don't know. And so, we can Google search. Yeah, we can look out there. But even if you Google search that, you're going to get all this different pieces of information. There's not really a consolidated place you can go to get a true wealth of knowledge. EDRM has, some great knowledge over here. Seeds has some great knowledge over here. And we have other organizations that do that as well. And I'd like to think, we as Gulfstream, we do that for our clients as well, because we have a lot of clients that trust us. Anytime they have a question, they know they can call us. And if it's not me, there's somebody on the team that has that experience and knowledge, and we can help you, whether it's one of our corporate clients, whether it's one of our law firm clients, or whether it's one of our consultative partners. So we're a little blessed like that we have that foundation in-house. But I really think we need to find a way to give that educational source even openly to a lot more people, so we can train a wider group of people, so that we can have more skilled individuals in the e-discovery industry. We have great people here. I mean, I'll tell you, I've been very blessed to work with a lot. I mean, speaking of, those bottles, like this set, which the crystal comes from and my rocks come from, got from one of my first mentors, actually, in the industry, one of my first bosses that I still have the pleasure and distinction of working for. Now we work together rather than me working for him. So I've gotten the pleasure to work with a lot of very knowledgeable people across my course in the career, but I also still see a lot of, kind of a gap in knowledge in a lot of places. And I'm not picking on attorneys necessarily, because I think there has been a better focus over the past, especially like 4 to 5 years, to get that information readily available for attorneys. But I don't think we have it as readily available on the technical side for the people supporting everything.
I think there's a lot of ways to. I think you're right. I mean, we could go down a lot of different rabbit holes and have a series of podcasts or webinars in and of itself based on the, your well said comments here. I had a LinkedIn post up the other day that said, speaking specific to attorneys and litigators' responsibilities in e-discovery, a lot of times e-discovery vendors will say, law schools need to be spending more time on e-discovery. And so my post was like, okay, well, what would you kick out of the current curricula? Or are you expanding the curricula requirements and the student debt that goes along with it? And you say that everybody needs more training on e-discovery. Well, what about law firm administration for solo practitioners or small firm individuals? Or what about legal operations for people who like to go in-house and are dealing with e-discovery from that perspective? I mean, I think that, in my opinion, and this is the third industry I've worked in, and it's always been kind of tech-enabled services. And I've always taken the same whole, kind of philosophical lens to the industry, which is, we can't and shouldn't expect our clients to know, quote unquote, everything, right? Because first of all, then that eliminates the market need for us. But secondly, it's just not realistic. And what people should be doing, and I think that you guys do a good job of this, is position yourselves such that, listen, we're going to be a consultative partner. We're going to tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. We've got these resources available to you. You're going to have, quote unquote, one throat to choke, right? Instead of being here, submit a ticket and we'll see who gets to you and when. And I think that's the right approach. And the cream will rise to the top, because the people who are, whether they're utilizing RFPs or whether all they're caring about is show me your rate card, show me your hosting per month, show me your hourly rates. Like, listen, if all you care about is rates, a lot of times vendors are either going to make a volume play and latch onto it, or they're going to say, hey, you know what? That's not us. But when you need something a little bit more high touch, a little bit more involved, a little bit more consultative, we're here for you, right?
And I'm glad you mentioned that. So, I mean, so that's one of my biggest kind of beefs about, let's call it the RFP program. Yeah. If all you care about is price, in a way, I think you need, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are scenarios where the only thing that matters is price, because maybe you're going to handle everything in-house and you're just looking for like an outsourced service or infrastructure. And so all you need is somebody that's going to give you the cheapest hosting rate, for the sake of argument, because you're doing everything else. So you just need cheap hosting. Totally understand that. But as we're talking about the RFP, a lot of RFPs don't just want that. And I've been very, I'm very lucky, especially at Gulfstream, that, we take that into account. We're looking at us as a whole as a value added service. But I think one of the things that's missing from, let's talk about the RFP process, is a question like, what do you do to train your in-house people? For example, I know each of our departments has in-house training, and we have career paths for people to progress. Now, I've been very lucky. There's one individual as well that I was very lucky. So he was my third hire when I came back. Third hire when I came back, and he started as one of the very junior tech guys, basically an engineer. I mean, I made him go out because we still had a big production floor, traditional paper services at that time. And he learned the paper side of the house, and he worked his butt off out there. He transitioned to the technical side, supporting e-discovery and conversions and stuff like that. But he continued to go through, and it evolved, that training program, and he's made his way to a project manager now, learning the client interaction and the other, because of all the knowledge he's gained over the years. And he's been very lucky. He's not just working for me, but we've been very lucky to bring in directors that have the same mentality that education and training is very important to build people up. But, now he's, this kid who was young and didn't necessarily have a career path, and he didn't know what he was doing. And I knew he may or may not stay, but I wanted to give him an opportunity for something. He found a love for it, and he took an opportunity because we were lucky enough to give it to him, took advantage of it, took the training and built himself, that skill set and the training. And I say that also because I think an RFP should ask questions like that, because your staff and personnel should be as important to you about as what your security is, because humans are just as important. These are the people that are supporting your projects. And if you only have a few very skilled people, again, I know companies back in the day that had two really smart guys and a whole bunch of people that were just, a button pusher. And unless you got those two guys, your project didn't go right.
Right.
And I don't have to name one company because there were a bunch way back in the day. Not true anymore. But why doesn't an RFP ask, how do you support your staff? How do you train your staff? And I'm not even talking about certifications, which should be an interest, but how do you continue to educate your staff? And not just, we get asked about cybersecurity. What do you do for cybersecurity training? But what about all the other subjects? Do I want a software engineer that has no idea anything about the software that he's supporting or how it's being used? And I say this from the perspective of an application developer. When I first came in as an application developer, I was building applications for people, and I had no idea what they were doing with them. Right. Zero. Because it wasn't a big enough process to go through the whole, collect requirements and use cases and all that. In our industry, a lot of the times it's, hey, I need you to build a script and it's going to do a categorical priv log. Great. I can build you a script. It's going to run against these documents. You pick the safe search and it kicks out a categorical priv log. But nobody really knows the answer. Why do they want a categorical priv log? What are they doing with it? Because if the developers understood, they may have other ideas, or they may have a better understanding of how to build it even further to add additional value-added services later on. Now, I'm going to pick on my company. We always try to have that conversation. Do you know why you're doing this? I don't want you just processing documents. I want you to know why you're doing this, what they're going to do with those documents, and what's going to happen to these documents down the road. Because then people are thinking about the perspective of the client and what they really need, not just, hey, I need to finish this process, get these documents into a hosting system for them to do something with them. That's all I have to do. I click these 5 buttons. I go through these checklists. Great. That email looks good. It's searchable. I updated the index. Done. But if you have no idea what people are doing with them, that's where you end. If you know what they're doing with them, you look at that document in a totally different way.
Yeah, it's the whole why behind the what. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a CIO during a enterprise-wide implementation was, listen, you cannot tell the development team, I want a door here. you need to tell them, I want a 6-paneled white oak door that hinges on this side that swings open in this direction, right? He's like, you gotta be specific and tell them the what's and the whys. Otherwise, you'll get a door and then the house will be built. And you're like, well, this isn't where I wanted the door. This isn't the type of door I wanted. Yep. And yeah, I thought that was very wise. So, and
it's true. So I'm going to pick on, so the president of the company during the first time I worked at Gulfstream told me something that's resonated with me the entire time. And I was in the middle of creating 100 different witness binders, and we had 4 copies of each binder to make with custom tabs and all of these different things. And we were printing out at that time thousands upon thousands of pieces of paper of all these exhibits. Oh, it was something special at that particular time. And if a particular attorney is watching this particular episode, you will know who you are. Because I did that for this one particular individual many times over the course of the last decade and a half. But he told me as we were doing this process, he said, think like the client. If you were the client and you had this binder, is everything in here the way you would want it? And of course, the first question I was like is, I have no idea. And his answer was wrong. Ask why.
Yeah.
There's a reason, because then you can look at what you're doing from that person's eyes and know, is this going to be useful, or because of your expertise, maybe there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. I can't think of a better note to end on than that. Ari, this was awesome. And I suspected, I didn't want to say anything to you at the top because I didn't want to make you self-conscious, but I suspected between you and me that this would probably be the longest episode to date. And I think we went ahead and set that record.
Awesome. I'll take it.
All right, brother. Hey, look, okay. I'm empty. Look, I'm toasting you. I got nothing. I've got left to do.
I'm a slacker today. You'll have to forgive me. I'll make it up.
Hey, man. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Anytime.